Welcome to the Indy Drills Podcast. It's a DB podcast. I'm your host, Chad Wilson, owner of All Eyes DB Camp and 101 DB Tips. It's the book that's really become very popular, and I'm happy to say that because a lot has gone into this. All of the coaching, all of the playing, all of the training, all wrapped up in this book, and over 100 of the best DB tips you'll ever get, available in softcover as well as an ebook delivered to you immediately. When you order, see the link in the description down below. But let's just jump into things this week. What's on the news table? What's the biggest news item? We just got by the NFL draft, and that's going to be a significant part of what I talk about in the show today. But so, that big thing is gone. We're past NFL free agency. And so there isn't a lot of DB news. What has been in the news cycle for the last 24 hours, because this is how we are in this day and age in this country, it is clips of Antonio Brown going against Shiloh Sanders several years ago. Antonio Brown, or the people running Antonio Brown's Twitter account, decided to put that out a couple of days ago with the caption of, when Dion used me to and I'm paraphrasing here. I don't think I have the actual tweet in front of me, but when Dion used me to help his sorry ass son, was how it's most disrespectful, text that you could put on a tweet, just totally disrespecting the kid and the father, just what you would expect from Antonio Brown. But I do maintain, and I think I've seen this somewhere, that Antonio Brown doesn't necessarily run his Twitter account, which to me is just, obviously, if that's the case, he would have had to have green lighted this, and anything being posted there, he's had to have seen it and been okay with it. But there's the other part too, where the people running it are just feasting on Antonio Brown's character, mentality, some of the things that he's had, and they're going overboard with it. And so we get tweets like that. Getting back to the content of the tweet, which not just the text, but the actual video, it was all just of the reps during that session that Antonio Brown won. And it was designed to support the actual wording in the tweet. The reality of it is, and I remember when this video was first out there, I can't remember how many years ago it was. Shiloh may or may not have been in college yet. Either way, he was a young DB, whether he was in his first couple of years of college or in high school. I don't think he was in high school. I want to say it was early years of college. Either way, there were plenty of reps where Shiloh locked up Antonio Brown, okay? An all-pro, former Pro Bowl wide receiver who, some will put in the top 5. I don't do that, okay? Some would put in the top 5 of receivers all time in the NFL. And here was Shiloh, a young DB, doing pretty well. On top of that, we all know that Shiloh is a safety and not a cornerback. And he's basically taking cornerback one-on-one reps against Antonio Brown and not doing too bad. Even on some of the plays where the ball was caught, Shiloh was in really good position. So kudos to Shiloh. What the Sanders family, Dion, Shadur, and Shiloh have faced since coming to Colorado, and very much during this draft process, the amount of hate that has come their way is just ridiculous. Now, I get why it happens. Okay, Dion is very brash. His kids have taken on that persona, and people don't like that. And in this era of social media, everyone gets to express their opinion. I was talking about that last week. And that opinion gets to be public. It's no more you just yell and shout and say something at the TV or at the game and then it just dies there. No, people get to go home, say something. If it's crafty enough, it goes viral, it gets replayed, it goes everywhere, and it gets to be filled up into people's consciousness. And so everyone is fighting to have that moment. The common Joe out there, who back in the day used to just be the guy at the stadium that yelled something to the opposing team as they were going in the tunnel, or maybe just yelled at the television, went off, smacked their wife, went off on their mom, kicked their dog, and then by Monday they were over it. now get on, whether it's Instagram, but most notably Twitter, and try to construct something that will go viral, and they will go on and on and on about it. Everyone wants their 15 minutes, and we're in a different era. So you will face even more hate. It'll see more widespread in this day and age when you behave the way that a Deion Sanders and the Sanders boys behave. People will hate that. I personally have no problem with it. Okay. Confidence is a thing. And if you played cornerback, you know that confidence is just about everything. All right. And so these guys have faced a tremendous amount of hate. Shiloh has kind of been in the background of that hate because it's been more focused on Shedeur, the quarterback, and, his potential is maybe being a first round pick. And then we all, talked about it when he slid all the way to the 5th round, and everyone has their theories and thoughts and opinions on it. But Shiloh has, prior to that, been the one that's gotten a whole lot of hate because people don't think he's an NFL football player. They don't want to hear his dad talking about it. They think he's not a guy that's going to stick on a roster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am not of that opinion. I've watched Shiloh's coach tape, all right, not just highlights of him. I watched the games in person, but watched the all 22, and the kid could be an NFL football player, can play safety in the NFL, but he's just going to have to be in the right situation. He's not the kind of guy that's going to go wherever, and it doesn't matter where that is, and be put in any system and survive. No, if we're being honest, that's not what's going to happen here. So I don't know if Tampa Bay is that spot. That will remain to be seen, but that's where he's going, so he's going to have to find a way to stick there. I will say this. Both Sanders boys are highly motivated to undo the words of people who have been against them for so long. And that's actually a good thing. When you're coming from what it is that they're coming from, which to a certain degree is privilege. My dad's got money. Our family's had money, so I'm not doing this for the money, so to speak, though they say they don't have a trust fund. It's not one of these deals where I either make it or I'm going back to a 1-bedroom apartment with 7 people in it, or I'm in the projects, or I'm in some log cabin in the corner of the South. It's not one of those situations for them. So it's hard to be motivated when you come from that. I think all the stuff that's happened, Shedeur falling to the 5th round, and all of the hate that gets thrown Shiloh's way has now given these guys a tremendous amount of motivation on top of the pedigree that they have and the knowledge and access to knowledge that they have and will have, going forward. And I think that's a good thing for them. But nevertheless, Shiloh strapping up AB, and AB's account hiding those reps was a funny thing to watch this week. True to form of social media, someone on Twitter had the original video and posted all of the clips that Shiloh won, and it really evened things out. Now, of course, the person who did that is not as popular as AB. That did not get as many looks, but it got a good amount. All right, it got a good amount, and to a certain degree, balanced that whole thing out. So whatever message that was being put out there, I don't know if it hit its mark, because nowadays it's hard to even know what it is the objective is. There may have been agenda there. If you're really of diabolical thought, man, this could have been coordinated between Deion and AB just to get Shiloh a little more attention. Everything down from the posting the reps without Shiloh in it, and then having someone post the reps where Shiloh was, winning some reps out there to make him look good. The whole thing could have been constructed. I trust nothing on Twitter anymore. There are a lot of agendas out there. So this whole thing could have been pre-planned, though exactly the way that it fell out, one way or another. It's more attention for Deion Sanders, more attention for Shiloh. And that's just the way that it is. But in terms of news and content, that is constantly being provided by the Sanders boys. And I mean Deion, I mean Shiloh, I mean Shedeur, and Deion Sanders Jr., who is the brains behind all of the Deion Sanders family content that we see out there. So listen, we deal with the Kardashians, don't we? They're constantly in our face. So if you're cool with the Kardashians, and I'm not saying that's what the Sanders family is, but it is a family that's we're seeing their life being played out in front of us. So it's the same thing. So if you're not mad at the Kardashians, hey man, don't go getting mad at the Sanders family. All right. They're doing their thing. These kids are living their life. And you know what? Both of them right now have an NFL opportunity. If you don't have that NFL opportunity and you want to be critical, if you've never had that opportunity and was never good enough to have that opportunity and you want to be critical, man, take a look at yourself. All right. If you've got a kid that plays football and he doesn't have that opportunity, hey, hold off on your criticism. Slow down a little bit. Check yourself. All right, while you're out there trying to be negative. All right, but let's get into some of this NFL draft stuff. Let's get a little deeper into it. I touched on it last week. I really just talked only about the first round and how I'm seeing this trend where we have less and less first round draft picks for defensive backs. This year was 3. All right. Again, I'm not counting Hunter because he would be considered an athlete if we were looking at a Rivals breakdown of this. An athlete. He plays both receiver and defensive back. I'm talking about just pure DBs. We only had 3 of those guys taken in the first round of the NFL draft. That's what we had last year. And a matter of fact, I pointed this out last week. Over the last 3 years, we've had the lowest amount in terms of a cumulative number of first-round defensive backs taken over any 3-year period within the last 10 years. I'm sorry for some of you if that's too much math, but if you take the last 10 years and you pull any 3-year segment out of it, the last 3 years has seen the least amount of first-round defensive backs taken than any other 3-year stretch over the last decade. So I asked the question, is this a trend? Is this short term? Is this long term? I don't know. I have some theories as to why this may be happening, but let's just talk about some of the numbers. The good news here is that over the last 3 rounds, now we're going to dig a little deeper into the draft. Over the last the first 3 rounds, the 2025 draft had the most defensive backs taken over the last 3 years. Okay, so within those first 3 rounds this year, we had 15 defensive backs taken. Okay, that's the good news because in 2024, that number was 13. In 2023, that number was a measly 10. That's the good news. The bad news is that in recent years, and this has kind of been a constant, you'll see a lot of DBs taken in the second round. So maybe guys didn't fit a certain criteria that, these teams want to hold hard to in terms of, height, weight, speed that a guy needs to have. And so that will knock a guy out of the first round into the second round where you are less on that and you're really more into maybe a guy's production. There's always going to be that height, weight thing. But you'll take the 4-5 corner, maybe even the 4-6 safety. I don't know if we're even doing that anymore, but he would have to be a high producer, well thought of player. That round, I think, is getting bumped down now. So we're getting less DBs taken in the first round, and we're not piling them into the second round anymore. We've pushed that now to the third round. In this 2025 draft, we had 9 defensive backs taken in the third round. Last year, 7 defensive backs were taken in that second round. This year, only 3 defensive backs taken in that second round. So let me just mention that again. 3 DBs in the first round this year, only 3 in that second round. As opposed to in 2024, there were 7 DBs taken in that second round. In 2023, there were 5 DBs taken in that second round. So all right, guys that weren't first rounders by characteristics, traits, etc., got pushed to that second round and teams felt more comfortable just taking them there. It seemed this year that they weren't even comfortable doing that in the second round and they bumped it to the third round. Now, it could just be one of those years where that's how the draft class played out. Sometimes there are better classes than others. That could be a factor. It's obviously something we're going to have to keep an eye on. But when I look at the trends as the first round that number starts getting smaller. All right. So it started getting smaller in 2023. It got small again in 2024, but we're still, doing the second round thing. And now it's small again in 2025 in the first round. And now the second round is also getting small, and we load it up in the third round. I'm really starting to think about what's going on here. I put out some things there last week that I'm still going to hold steadfast to. Maybe it's just what we're seeing in terms of coverages being played and how, cornerbacks are being deployed. All right. In on these team schemes, everyone is running quarters, which means there's a less of a reliance on man-to-man skills. I think teams are putting a little bit more trust into what's happening up front and getting edge rushers and trying to pressure the quarterback. There could be a number of reasons for that. One of them is, I will maintain, and I've said this for a long time, the biggest mismatch on a football field is a defensive end versus a tackle. And maybe teams are leaning more into that fact. It could be that it's less punitive when you get a penalty from an edge rusher who might have hit the quarterback too hard or too high or whatever, than getting a pass interference penalty. That could be a 30, 40, 50, 60-yard penalty. And that's what we're seeing. Listen, if you talk to any DB, they've been complaining. DB coach or DB, the player, have complained about the way that the game gets called against us. And when we're talking about the NFL and how much of a punitive penalty that is because of it's a spot foul, then maybe you could understand some of that. I did talk last week about how the teams that really, really matter and that are consistently good in this league have not really subscribed to this theory of we're just going to do everything with the pass rush and we'll just put whatever kind of DBs back there. We'll get mid-rounders. It doesn't matter who we put back there. We're just going to rely on our scheme, and our scheme is going to get it all done, and we can just plug and play players in there, and they don't have to have any type of elite traits, and we don't have to pay them a bunch of money. That has not been the case for the teams that have been getting it done in this league. The Chiefs of the world, the Eagles of the world, right? The Ravens, the Bills, teams you just see in the playoffs every year. They have a certain way of doing things and have not fallen into that trend. But for the rest of the league, which is most of the teams, it seems like that's the route that we're going. I'm going to break these numbers down for you. And this is strictly cornerbacks. All right. I'm only talking about cornerbacks with regard to the draft in this episode. Round 1 was 3, as I mentioned. Second round, 3. Third round, we had 9. All right. We're so exhausted from the 9 that we got in that third round. They only went with 1 cornerback in the fourth round, then loaded back up again with 5 in the fifth round, 4 in the sixth round, 5 in the seventh round. Let's just talk about what happened the year before. As I said, 3 in the first round, 7 in the second round, 3 in the third round. So this year, 9 in the third round versus 3 the year before. Then 3 in the fourth, then 10 in the fifth round. All right. Fifth round, they loaded up and said, all right, we're going to take a chance and some flyer on some guys, maybe try and find some depth pieces. And they went with 10 in the fifth round, 6 in the sixth round, and 4 in the seventh round. And that's interesting. So this year we had 29 cornerbacks taken overall, 36 in 2024, 36 in 2023. So the overall number of cornerbacks has fallen off. Again, could be a number of factors, not that great of a class in general, or, teams maybe think cornerbacks aren't as vital anymore. Or maybe there's just this thing where teams are looking for guys that are more multiple. They can do a variety of things. They're looking for more Swiss Army knives. So a guy might be classified as a safety, but he can also play corner. Who knows? We're going to see this whole thing unfold, but trust me, I've got an eye on this and following this. Let's slide over into what type of players now are we seeing in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. But before I do that, I'm going to talk to you about why this is important, okay? Maybe you're a high school football player, or maybe you're about to enter into college, or maybe you're a college player, in which case you really shouldn't even be asking this question. And you're thinking, man, who cares? This is NFL. That's way down the road. We're thinking way too far down the road. I'm gonna tell you this: what happens at that top league trickles down everywhere else. If these teams start drafting the way that they draft and they have success doing what they're doing, and there's guys with certain traits, and that's what it seems like everyone is doing, then suddenly that's what the colleges start wanting to have in their roster. Do we all remember the Legion of Boom and how we had one corner, 6'3", Richard Sherman, and then we had 6'4", Brandon Browner? That thing trickled all the way down into college and down into high school. I was hardcore coaching then. And yep, I wanted to follow that. I thought that was really, something that would be an X factor. So I had tall cornerbacks. That's what I wanted. I wanted really tall guys outside, 6'1", 6'2", and then I could put the shorter guys down inside to cover the quick slot wide receivers. I was full in on that. And I started to see that trend happening in high school. You started to see the rivals' top, defensive backs, the 247 top defensive backs, started to get taller and taller and taller. You guys could do your own research on that. Start looking at when the Legion of Boom started to become very popular, and then watch what happened in high school football, the types of guys that started playing cornerback. So that just goes to show you that what happens in that top league, that's the most popular brand of football being played, is the NFL. Everyone's watching that. People are taking notes, and then they start adopting some of the theories that are in that top league. And so that's what moves into college. And then, obviously, then that's what's going to start happening in high school, because the high schools want to supply the colleges with talent. Now more than ever, since it's more difficult to get high school players into college. So they're going to want to appeal to what the colleges want, and that's what they're going to start putting out on their high school football fields. And so it is in your best interest to be a forward thinker, both if you're a player, a parent of a young player, or a coach at that high school level, to pay attention to what's happening in those top leagues and move accordingly. So let's start talking about what was picked in these 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. Back in the day, all right, and that's not, when I say back in the day now, because of social media, that's not as far as it used to be, okay? When I was growing up and someone started saying back in the day, they were talking about the 60s, which was 20, 30 years before, the current moment I was having this conversation with. When you say back in the days now, that's a decade ago. It could be even less than that in certain situations and certain things that you're talking about. So I'm talking about 10, 20 years now. Back in the day, the 5th, 6th, 7th round was reserved for guys that you're really taking a chance on. So this would be the corner that's sub 5'11", or the corner from a, FCS school, or maybe even a Division II school, or maybe even a D3 school. That's what you would see in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. Okay. Something that's a risk taker. There might be some projects in there, but that's what you would see there. And you might not always recognize the name of the school. Okay. It might be a Towson State or something of that nature, Grand Valley State, something of that nature, something you just don't think about as much on a Saturday. You're not looking for the score of the Towson game. Okay. But that's the kind of player you would see. I'm seeing a change there as well. Let me talk to you about what came out let's start with the 5th round. The first 2 guys taken in the 5th round were Ohio State Buckeyes. Yeah, that team that won the championship. And one of them was a big name coming out of high school, Denzel Burke, 5'11", 186 pounds, from Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State had a ton of guys. Ohio State was the king of this draft. Okay, they ate. And typically you'll see that out of the national champion, especially when it's a school like Ohio State that is either 1, 2, or 3 in terms of recruiting every year. So this should be no surprise. All right, second was Hancock out of Ohio State. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. So neither one of those you would say would fit into the criteria of the type of corner you would see taken in the late rounds back in the day. After that, Frazier out of Southern Illinois, 6'3", 186. This is obviously not a sub 5'11 guy. Southern Illinois, yeah, not one of your marquee schools, okay? Not a, Power 4 school. But this guy's 6'3", 186. You would see a guy like this taken in the third or fourth round in years previous. Now, I'm saying this without having watched tape on this kid, but 6'3", 186, they would try that in the fourth round, okay? Maybe even the last part of the third round. Then we got Jason Marshall from Florida, 6 foot, 195 pounds. Florida, a marquee school. And a kid's 6 foot, 195 pounds. That's a big corner. That's a guy that you might have seen in third or fourth round years previous. But remember, we've got this trickle down happening. Less corners taken in the first and second round and more being taken in the third round. And so that means everyone else gets pushed down. All right. McWilliams out of UCF was taken as the last cornerback in that fifth round. And here's a guy that was 5'10", 191 pounds. So this fits the criteria. However, this guy ran a 4'4", 140, 34-inch broad, 12 on the bench. Okay, this is a physical specimen. Moving to the sixth round, Lagerbein from Rutgers, a well-thought-of player who obviously many thought would be a mid-round pick, ends up going in the sixth round. Harris out of Cal, 5'11", 188 pounds. Then we get Core out of Western Michigan, 6'1", 190. Strong out of Virginia Tech, 6'1", 185. We're not getting those super undersized corners being taken in these rounds anymore. All right, moving to the seventh round. Bridge out of Florida, another marquee school, Power 4 school. 6'2", 200 pounds. So a big corner from a big school. That's what's taken in the seventh round. 6'2", 200 pounds from a big school. It's now a seventh rounder. All right. Black out of Oklahoma State, 6 foot, 190. Robinson out of Tulane, 5'11", 185. A little bit closer to what you might have seen back in the day. A little bit of a smaller corner, not from a marquee school. Tulane does do well in their secondary. If there's one school that I could say has done well in terms of producing talented players in their secondary and playing good defense and playing well in the secondary, it is Tulane. So let me, throw some shine their way for that. And then finally, the last corner taken in that seventh round out of Central Michigan, 5'11", 195 pounds, Kent. So what am I saying here? If you happen to be a guy that doesn't fit those dimensions, you're a sub 5'11" cornerback, whereas you might have been able to set your eyes on maybe sneaking in the draft in years past. I'm here to tell you the pickings are getting slim. So what do you do about that? You better be very athletic, okay? You better be able to run 4.4, 4.3. You better have some track times. You better be on that track. I don't care how you feel about how tired it makes you. It's too much work, or maybe it's embarrassing to come late in a race. All this advice I've been giving guys for years about run, track. You better start listening to that, because I've got news for you. If you get to this point in your career, you get into college, or you start getting late into your college career, and you're lacking that track background, and you're just a 4-5 corner, and you're 5'10". If you don't have double-digit career interceptions, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem getting drafted. You're going to have a problem getting invited to a camp. You're going to have a problem getting invited to a mini camp. Mark my words. Mark my words. If you're a young guy listening to this, you better take heed, because this is the way this thing is trending, okay? Now, I'm not suggesting that you tall guys, big guys can just take a vacation, because guess what? If this trend continues where everyone's getting pushed down, guess what? You might have been a third rounder in years past. You're now a fifth rounder. And if you don't have a skill level, you're just a big guy, man, you could fall right out of the draft. You'll be sitting there 6'2", 200 pounds, not drafted. And people will not understand what the heck's going on there. Hey, folks, Kobe Bryant, a big-time producer in terms of making plays on the ball in college football out of Kansas, 13 interceptions, 35 pass breakups, was not drafted. That doesn't give you an idea of how things are working. You better wake up. Granted, 5'11", 180-pound corner, not huge, okay? Average size, I would say, and ran a 4.5 40. In years past, man, that'd get you second, third round. Kid fell all the way out of the draft. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs. I don't know if there were some problems there. I can't speak on all that. Typically, you don't always have all that information unless you're some kind of an insider or you're an agent or, you do some work with the teams. You won't have that information. So I can't answer that. But what I do know is that kid made plays on the football. And in years past, you'd have to be a really terrible guy off the field to not get drafted when you have that kind of production. So bringing it back to my younger guys, make sure you're a good athlete. And then on top of that, you better be sure you have skills. You better have a football IQ. You better have all those things because you're going to need to make plays on the ball. You're going to need to be an athlete. You're going to need to be running 4.4, 4.3. You're going to need to be strong. You can't be a weakling. You can't be short and frail. And you're going to have to produce. So that means double-digit interceptions. That means 20, 30 pass breakups, passes defensed in college. You're going to have to produce like that. And if you're at one of these smaller schools, oh, yeah, you're going to have to show that you are dominant at that level for the NFL to come calling. I have continued to see this year after year after year as I've continued to do pre-draft work. That means getting guys ready for pro days and combines. It's hard to get drafted. I think guys are taking that for granted. It is difficult to get drafted. And you know what's getting harder now? It's getting harder to get a call to get invited as a free agent or to get a call to be invited to minicamp. There are so many good DBs that I've seen out there, and some of them are guys that I work with that didn't get a call. Certainly worthy, didn't get a call. So I'm telling you right now, while you are young, heed this advice. Don't let it go in one ear and out the other. Don't let what I'm saying bounce off your head and go in another direction for someone else to pick it up. Take this in right now. Get on top of your athleticism, get on top of your skill and technique, and learn how to play football. Understand, learn the game. So that means you're going to have to cut something out of your current schedule and implement some film study and some football education. The boring stuff about football that you don't want to be engaged in. Time to get on that because your future career is going to count on it. Just some words of advice. And now for the mailbag. All right, great mailbag question this week has to do, obviously this is has been brought on by spring football coming around, or, the summer coming fast approaching, and it's going to start getting real. Man, how fast was that? Just a moment ago, it was the new year, and guys were talking about let's just start getting ready for our offseason training. And now football is super around the corner. So in a lot of states, spring football is starting. If not, you're ramping things up, getting ready for the summer program and practices starting. By the way, just this note, when in terms of a mailbag question, the best way to get your question asked on this show is to hit the comment section in this show down below. That's the best place to put it. Otherwise, you can send me an email to cwilson@alleyesdbcamp.com. If you're listening to this on your streaming device, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcast, whatever else, if that streamer allows you to ask a question there, you could do it there. That would be the third best of the options that I've given you. The best would be putting that comment on this show. Love the comments, by the way. On the show, whether it's a comment, asking a question, or it's a comment, giving feedback on the show, or, discussing any of the topics that I'm mentioning on this show. Love to get that. So I'm constantly checking that. So your best place for you to go for a question and to get it asked is to comment on this particular show right here. Outside of that, send an email. and we go from there. This week's question comes out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. David O asks, I am the new DB coach on varsity and need some tips on constructing my Indy period. Do you have any pointers? Great question. Indy periods are very, very important to defensive back coaches. They're never long enough. I will say that. All right. To start there, David, they're never long enough. So if you're new to this whole coaching thing, get ready for that life. You'll never feel like you had enough time of Indy. I've rarely ever hear DB coach say, oh, that's enough Indy. Can we end this and move on to something else? That rarely ever happens. I'm just going to be general in my talk about your Indy period. First of all, your Indy period is, and this is going to sound very simplistic, but true. It is really just to ingrain into your players' heads the skills that they are going to need the most when they're out there playing for your team in your scheme on your defense. The trick here, the idea of Indy period is to automate the skills for your players so that when they're out there on the games on Friday night or whatever day it is that you play, they have to think less about their movements and more about what is happening in front of them, whether that is the receivers' splits, formations, reading number 2, reading the quarterback, whatever else it is out there that they need to read from the offensive side. The game really does slow down for your players when they have to think less about what they're doing on this side of the ball, and they can think more about what the offense is trying to do to them. So that's A, the skill work, and B, their understanding of you guys' scheme. I understand now more and more these defensive coordinators are trying to take up part of your Indy period and telling you you're going to need to teach this scheme, you're going to need to teach this coverage during your Indy period. I personally hate that. As a DC, I never really did that to my assistant coaches. Now, I was also the DB coach, so I didn't do that to myself. But I didn't do that to my DB, my linebacker coaches and my defensive line coaches. I want skill development, skill drilling during those periods, and we'll just find another time to get in the scheme. And if I find like I'm doing that too much, I'm doing too much stuff. All right. So hopefully you have that understanding with your defensive coordinator. Hopefully he's not that kind of guy that he's going to infringe upon your Indy period. So far as what you put in there, try as much as you can to have a set of drills that you're going to do every day, and those are going to consist of the movements that your players are going to do the most. So if your players are going to be backpedaling, you got to include that. I would say you would need that for the overall player development. I don't care who you are, but if your Indy period is super short and your team never backpedals, I'm going to have to say this against my will and say you probably don't want much backpedaling in your Indy period if they're just not going to be doing it. If you happen to be in one of those defenses, and I don't really support this, where your guys don't backpedal, keep it to a minimum, man, because, again, the idea is to automate the movements your guys are going to be doing the most. If they're going to be shuffling, they're going to be doing a crossover run, make that a big part of your Indy period. And that's going to be one of the drills that you do every day. Obviously, tackling is a part of this thing. So if you can include a quick, very organized tackling drill that they do in there, that's in your best interest. There have been times in my coaching career where I didn't have that, and I, kind of regretted it. I was a little bit more involved in this, the footwork and the hand placement and the press and the off man and all that stuff, and would sometimes neglect tackling. Don't make that mistake. I fixed that more in the later part of my career with more experience. I'm giving you this nugget now. Handle that now. Try to have something with tackling every day in it, and maybe something they can quickly move through, because you don't want to tie up your entire Indy period with that. If you guys are going to be weaving, if they're going to be, opening up and running at a 45-degree angle, your safeties, if you do a lot of coverage disguise in the secondary. So you're going to have a lot of situations where guys are on the hash, rotating to the middle of the field, or rotating from the hash to a third, or rotating from the middle to a half, whatever the case may be. You're going to want to include that in your Indy period because you don't want to be out there on Friday watching guys mess that up. So you have a nice little set of everyday drills, usually 4, maybe 5 in there if your guys are really crisp with it. And that's what you want to do. And you want to take the early part of your spring or the early part of your summer to introduce you guys to the drill, introduce your guys to the drill. You want to have names for those drills. So when the time comes, you just say the name of that drill and guys know exactly where to go, what to do, and how to start the drill. That's number one. Another thing is maybe there's a time, as a coach, you can never envision this, but maybe there's a time where you won't be at practice and someone else has to take over. And you have an assistant, a super young assistant, maybe a kid that's just finished playing, or it has to be another coach that coaches another position do it. You're going to want to have that setup that I just told you about, where basically your players can run the Indy period and your coach can just supervise it and keep a watchful eye. But you don't want a situation where guys are lost, they don't know the names of the drills, and it's just a complete and total mess. So that day that you were away was a complete failure in terms of an Indy period. So give names to your drills, be able to just say them out, and your guys jump right into the drills. That part should take 10 to 12 minutes, the little everyday drills. Then after that, hopefully you've got a 20-minute Indy period. If it's just 15 minutes, you know what, man? You're probably just going to be doing those everyday drills. Or maybe you do those everyday drills. They take 10 to 12 minutes. And then there's one other very important thing that you're going to be doing this week, or one skill that you really want to get nailed down for some guys. And that's the other drill that you do that takes up your 15 minutes. If you've got 20 or 25 minutes, which your Indy period should be longer in the early part of your summer and in spring ball as you're kind of introducing guys to football, then you want to start thinking about some of the other specialized drills and skills that you want your guys to learn. I'm not going to get into specifics here. I will go more in depth on this topic in terms of what exact kind of drills need to be put in there and the exact structure you might want to put together, and give some examples of things that I've used in the past in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. I have a link to it down in the description below. That falls under the category for me as something, an advanced topic, and that's what I do in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. So if you're a player really trying to level up, or a coach trying to reach that next level, the All Eyes DB Camp members area is there for you, and that's a topic I would go more in depth on there. But that's how you should structure that Indy. If you just keep in mind the point of trying to automate the process here. Think of it as a business, okay? You an assembly line, something that just runs smoothly, and then on game day I need it to run smoothly. That's how you want to set it up. A class of everyday drills, and then some specialized things that you need to do. Maybe there was something that guys just were getting absolutely wrong the day before in practice. Now that's what's going to take up the period after your everyday drills the next day of practice. So you have your 10 to 12 minutes of everyday drills. And now today we're going to eat up that additional 3 to 8 minutes to maybe even, 10 minutes of time with something we were struggling with yesterday. That could have been making plays on the deep ball. That could have been any number of things. Not, just draw your mind to any kind of breakdowns guys might have been having. Not using their eyes properly, not reading their keys, something that was going wrong in practice that you need to fix. That would eat up some of your time. I would also say this too. Yes, you want footwork drills. You want a tackling drill. You want ball drills in your practice, okay? Guys need to catch the football. They're going to be going up against wide receivers who catching the football is a big part of the wide receiver Indy period. You don't want your guys out on the field being matched up against a guy. I'll just put it to you this way. You don't want your guys out on a battlefield going up against people that have shoot guns all day long, and your guys only shot guns for 10 minutes. It's going to be a slaughter, okay? Your side's going to lose. So you want a ball drill daily in your Indy period and coach it hard. Teach those guys to catch the football with their eyes. Teach them to catch the football away from their body, because that's what the receiver is going to do when the ball is coming. He's going to extend his arms to catch that football, and if you've got a bunch of body catchers, they will not win the 50-50 battles, okay? They'll be in good position, they'll just lose at the end. And that's super frustrating both for you as the coach as well as them, the player, and it could lead to them losing confidence. So if it's just one ball drill, coach it up hard. Don't let guys get away with bad habits because they get very hard to correct. So if you let them go through spring with bad habits, when the summer comes around, you're going to spend a whole bunch of time trying to uncoach those bad habits. And that's a waste of time. And you know how pressed things get in the summertime as you start catapulting towards that opening game. If you think your Indy periods are short now, they will be ultra short if you've got to spend time trying to uncoach bad habits. And it's even a worse feeling when you are responsible for those bad habits. So yes, footwork drills, tackling drill, ball drill, rest of that time, things you need to correct or another skill that you know is super important. Last thing I'll say is, man, if you have the ability to do this, if time permits, whatever the case may be, give your guys one specific drill that they need to do after practice every single day. And that should be one of the most important things that you do in the secondary. So you might want to separate it for safeties and for corners. So safeties will do one thing every day after practice. Corners will do another thing every day after practice, but make sure they get that done. And 5 to 10 minutes starts to add up. All right. Over a week period, that's an hour. Over a season, that's 20 hours of getting really, really good at this one thing. All right. So that's just the overview, David, for you. I hope that really does help you. But so far as going a little bit more into detail and the depth and structuring it, you can get that in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. So that's the answer there. Again, if you are interested in having a question answered about scheme, technique, whatever, anything DB related, feel free to reach out and ask that question in the comment section down below or send an email to cwilson@alleyeasdbcamp.com. Maybe I will choose your question in the next edition of the Indy Drills podcast. And every now and then, I just randomly send out a copy of 101 DB tips to someone who asked a question, and I threw it here out on the show. So that's the route to go. All right, that's it. I'm going to move on to the main topic of the show today. And that main topic is using your eyes. It is very important now as we move into this spring football and we start getting closer to start thinking about our keys. Now, I'm a big guy in terms of eyes, okay? I've looked, the name of the company is All Eyes DB Camp. So obviously it's very, very important to me. But as we start moving into real football here, it is important that guys read their keys, safeties and corners. Corners, when you're pressed up, that seems to be when guys are most aware of their eyes as so far as cornerbacks are concerned. You're most aware of what your eyes are looking at when you're pressed up because it seems super ultra important. Everyone knows we want the eyes on the hips and we're trying to leave our eyes locked on the hips when we're in press. All right, that's cool. I'm telling you something now. Your eyes are important all the time when you're playing defensive back. And most teams don't just press every down. So if you're only aware of what your eyes are doing and what you're reading in press, then, you might just be on point as a DB 20 to 30% of the snaps in a game. Is that really what you want? Is that going to make you the playmaker that you want to be? Is that going to get you all county? Is that going to make you an All-American? Is that going to make you a guy that's highly recruited? Is that going to make you a guy that rises up the draft boards? No, it's not, okay? You're just going to be an average, normal guy who's late to the party, that's reacting late to everything, and you're going to have a lot of tackles. It's not an impressive stat for you at corner. Maybe more at safety, but you want to make plays on the ball. You want passes defensed. You want interceptions. You want to change the outcome of games, and that's going to be by you getting your hands on the ball. So you got to be able to read your keys, and that should be foremost in your mind at all times when you line up. So in your 7-on-7 period and in your team period, be ultra aware of reading your keys. If that's you as a safety and you need to be reading number 2, get your mind set on that. If you need to be reading the uncovered lineman because you're in the run fit, or you need to be reading a tackle because that's going to trigger you downhill, make sure that you get your eyes there. And one of the best ways for you to do that is watch film, watch the offense and practice watching that key that is important, all right? The key that you need to have. So if it's an uncovered lineman, I'm watching film, I'm watching practice from yesterday. Put yourself in the practice situation while you're at home, okay? You're not suited up out on the field. Put yourself in a practice situation while you're at home and just stare at your key. Watch that uncovered lineman, and when he makes whatever move it is he's going to make, put yourself in the imagination of now making the move that's required of you based on what that lineman does. If it's him setting up and you need to drop back into pass coverage because he's takes a pass set, imagine yourself doing that. If you're supposed to trigger up and run the alley or be in the run fit and you see him fire out, just imagine yourself doing that. That's area number one. Now, when you go to your Indy period, every single drill that you do, be aware of what your eyes are supposed to be doing. I would dare say to you that that's the first thing you need to get set when you're about to do a drill. Where are my eyes supposed to be? A lot of times I see guys go through an Indy period and do their drills in Indy period, and the last thing they're thinking about is their eyes. Their eyes are all over the place because they're just trying to get through Indy. Look, I've been a player. I know how it is. There's days you don't feel like practicing, and the days you don't feel like practicing, the Indy period is most annoying to you, and you just want to get through it. And this is the same drills that we're doing every day. So if I don't do it right today, what's the big deal? We'll do it again tomorrow. We did it yesterday. Whatever. Don't do that to yourself. Take it seriously. Be a perfectionist when it comes to those drills. And part of being the perfectionist is handling the part of you that's the most important thing when you're out there playing, and that's what you are looking at. So if you're doing a press drill, have your eyes on the wide receiver's hips, even when there isn't a wide receiver in front of you. Some of those press drills are going to be on air. This is not time for you to let your eyes wander down the street, into the stands, onto the floor, looking at a coach, looking at the next player, whatever. It's time to lock in and pretend there's a receiver in front of you. If you're doing a drill that works on you reading the quarterback, or it's footwork, but in this situation you would be reading the quarterback, pretend there is a quarterback there. Or you would be reading number 2, pretend that you're reading number 2. Every single time you do a drill. So of course, now you did it watching film, you did it in Indy. So when you move to 7-on-7 and team, it's a little easier for you to do it. It's just what you do now. But be aware of it when you're in 7-on-7, right? Take it from your film study to Indy to 7-on-7. Now it's really easy when you're doing team period. And if you get all 4 of those, and you consistently get all 4 of those, when the game comes, it's easy. Now it's going to be one of those things like I was talking about and how you construct your Indy, where you don't even think about it anymore. You automatically put your eyes in that right spot. And now you don't have to say to yourself, over and over, well, put my eyes here, look at this. You already know what your keys are. You've been doing it all week. You've been doing it for months. You put your eyes there. Now you can better think about what it is the offense is going to be doing here, what might be coming my way. I promise you that's when the game slows down. And the biggest key to the game slowing down is your eyes being in the right place. When your eyes are in the right place, you now have the ability to anticipate, and now you can trigger faster. You can get out of your breaks. You can break to the right area. You can move into your next movement. So if you're supposed to go from a back pedal to a crossover run, you will do that faster because you're anticipating it. When you anticipate something, you're able to react faster to when it actually happens. Anticipation is not guessing. I want you guys to understand that. Okay, if you're anticipating an out route, it's not just trying to jump the out route before the out route happens, and then you end up being wrong. And it's a deep ball, the ball goes over your head, touchdown, and your coach, if he doesn't yank you off the field, is going absolutely nuts. Anticipation of an out route is seeing it, keying myself up for it, so I'm getting my body in the proper position to potentially break on that. And when the hips drop and they turn, now you can trigger faster, get there, and be a factor in the on the play, whether that's getting the ball down with a pass breakup or getting my hands on it. All right, so keeping this brief, be aware of what your eyes are doing. Please read your keys, and reading your keys is not just doing it in team period. It's not just doing it on game day. It's doing it in all parts of your preparation. Watching film, Indy period, 7-on-7, team. Film study, Indy period, 7-on-7, team. Repeat that, repeat that, repeat that. It gets easy in the game. Try that this spring. And if you have a spring football game, you're going to see how easy it is for you in a spring football game. You're going to make a lot more plays, and you're going to be happy with your result. Okay? The eyes are the key. This is the guy who owns All Eyes DB Camp telling you that. The eyes are the key. Be on that. Be all over that. Be on top of it, and you will be a much bigger playmaker. All right, speaking of being a playmaker, once again, got to give a plug for 101 DB tips, over 100 of the best DB tips out there. Tips on playing corner, nickel, safety, how to train in the offseason, how to watch film, how to play man, how to play press, how to play zone, all of those great things and more wrapped up in this book. Also, if you're trying to really level up your game, come join us in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. It is growing exponentially. I've been talking about it week after week, and more guys are coming in there, and they're giving really rave reviews. Similar to that, like the one that you see on the screen right now. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that people are getting in here. This is how they feel about the All Eyes DB Camp members area. Hey, you want to feel like this too. You want to come in, you want to get that kind of information. This is just going to level your game up. If you have a copy of 101 DB Tips plus a membership to the All Eyes DB Camp members area, I'm pretty much guaranteeing you 2025 season will be better than 2024, 2023, or any other season before that. I'm making that guarantee to you because knowledge is key, and those who use their resources are those who level up. Those are the people that win. Those are the people that get rich. So be rich as a DB. I'm trying to make you all wealthy DBs, and this is the way that you're going to do that. So check the links in the description down below. All right, before you leave, you know how we grow this community? You know how I can continue making great content like this is I get more and more people in and watching these videos and commenting and sending information to me. That allows me to have more and more information on what kind of content needs to be created there. So I need you guys to help me out with that by sharing this video and then also subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss out on the next edition of the Indy Drills podcast. So whether you're listening on a streaming device, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, whatever you're listening to, or you're just watching this on YouTube, hey man, don't hog all this information. Don't be a gatekeeper. Share this podcast, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. That's how we're going to grow this thing. That's how more great content comes out. That's how you get more knowledge. That's how we all level up. So I'd appreciate you guys doing that. And until next time, All Eyes DB Camp, consistency breeds results.